Hello, everyone. My name is Horse Guy Mike, and today we're going to look at the top 5 historic Derby winner trends dating back to the year 2000 and how we can look at those trends in this year's field and see which horses stack up. So the first trend we're going to look at is the running style. And we're going to look at the Brisnet running style, and they've got 4 different letters that we're going to take a look at. The first letter being the E style, and that's for horses on the lead who typically win in a gate to wire fashion. EP style is the next up, and that's for horses that can win on the lead or just off in that 2 to 3 position. The next is the P letter, and that's for horses coming from mid to the back of the pack who make late runs on the turn or down the stretch. And then the S style, which is the sustained runners. Those are those deep closers, those one-run closers who are hoping for a late pace and who are going to make that deep run down the stretch. Looking back into the history of the Derby, since 2000, 17 of the 22 winners have been that E or EP style. What that means is we're really looking for horses who are going to be on or near the lead. And this is kind of unique to the Derby in that there's so much traffic problems with the Derby when you have 20 horses breaking out of the gate. It's hard for those deep closers and those kind of back of the pack runners to make that move because you have a lot of these horses want to make that move. And if they're all making that same move on the turn and down the stretch, they're going to get into each other's way. They're not going to be able to find the gaps. And so you want a horse that's on the front who can avoid traffic issues, who can avoid the kickback that you're going to get from the track that day and have that clear run. So this is really effective in this year's race because a lot of the favorites have that P style. Forte is a P, Tapit Trice is a P, Angel of Empire is a P, Two Fills is a P. So you're really having to overcome a lot when looking at that this year. There's only a few E and EP style horses as well, with the only E in this race so far is Verifying, and the major EP runners in this race would be someone like Kingsbarns, maybe even Derma Sotogake, even though Brisnet does not assign a letter designation to those international runners. So with not a lot of pace up front, it's going to be very difficult for those P and S style runners to get up to the front. Even in the years where the P and S style runners have been able to win the race, they've had really fast fractions. Look at last year, for instance. Rich Strike was able to win the race when they went 21-3, 45-1. He was an S style runner. Orb in 2013, he was a P style runner. They went 22-2, 45-1. Street Sense in 2007, 22-2, 46-1. So they're going to need a fast pace, and I don't think we're going to have it here. And with so many of the top choices being those deep closers, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to find a front running style that's going to fit for this specific race at a good price. The next factor we want to look at is their Beyer speed figure. 19 of the 22 previous winners achieved a 95 Beyer speed figure or better in their career leading up to this race. And you might think that that's not a big deal. A lot of people give Beyers different weights. Some think they're overrated. Some prefer other, speed figures, Timeform, Equibase, Brisnet. All of them give you a great picture of how this horse is running. But to have that baseline 95 Beyer on your resume is very important. 19 of the 22 previous runners had that 95 Beyer or better in either the last start or the previous start before that. Of the 3 who did not, again, Rich Strike last year, who's an outliner nearly every single category. Animal Kingdom did not have it. And then I believe Mind That Bird. So 3 really, really long shots did not have that 95 Beyer or better going into this race, but you can't factor in on getting a long shot home. So looking in this race, you've got a couple of horses who had that 95 or better, either in their last start or start beforehand. Practical Move, Verifying, Confidence Game, Kingsbarns, Forte, Tapit Trice. They're the ones who have had a 95 or better, Two Fills as well. Derma Sotogake, again, had no Beyer for international numbers, although his Timeform is really good, and Timeform US had an estimate of around 121. I've seen some people throw out that he had a 100+ Beyer based on some internal calculations, but there's no way of knowing. So really only 6 or 7 horses in this race have achieved that number or better. So you really want to make sure they've got that solid speed base figure. The next thing we want to look at is how they finished in their final prep race. Of the last 22 runners, 19 of the 22 finished either second or better in their final prep. And again, it's going to be those same 3 outliers that did not achieve that: Rich Strike, Mind That Bird, and Giacomo. Giacomo finished 4th in the Santa Anita Derby. Mind that Bird finished 4th in the Sunland Derby, and Rich Strike finished 3rd in the Jeffrey B. Stakes. Every other horse to win the Derby since 2000 has finished either 1st or 2nd in their last prep. So you really want a horse that's on the upswing, who was competitive in their last race, and wasn't just limping into this race due to points from getting 3rd or 4th in low level races as they're kind of coming into this. So looking at those last key preps is going to be very important. And that leads into our next trend, and that's having prepped in one of the major dirt circuits in America. And I've specified that because the UAE Derby in Dubai has never produced the winner of this race. The Saudi Derby has never produced the winner of this race. And then dirt circuit specifically, because no horse who did their last prep on either turf or on synthetic has gone on to win the Derby, besides last year's winner, Rich Strike, and besides Animal Kingdom in 2011, who won the Spiral Stakes, so it's also been recalled the Jeffrey B. Stakes. So the Jeffrey B. Stakes on synthetic has only produced 2 winners. And again, Rich Strike, major outlier in every single caveat. Animal Kingdom, not too much of an outlier, but still enough to where you really want to focus on those key dirt races. So in our instance, we're going to be looking at Santa Anita Derby, Louisiana Derby, Arkansas Derby, Florida Derby, and the Wood Memorial and the Bluegrass Stakes. Those are the key races in America that produce the majority of the winners. The last major trend is kind of up for debate now, and that's being raced at 2. And so for the longest time, since the 1800s, there was the curse of Apollo, where horses who did not race at 2 had never won the Kentucky Derby. And that curse was broken in 2018 with Justify, who went a perfect 3 for 3 in his 3-year-old year and went on to win the Derby and break that curse of Apollo. So since 2000, 21 of the 22 winners did race at 2. And so a lot of people still factor that in as a very important key feature you want to look at. People are hesitant to choose horses who did not race at 2. This is kind of up for debate because you're not getting a lot of quality horses into the Derby who did not race at 2. Last year we had Taba, who was a great horse, who might still be a great horse, but he didn't do very well last year. There was Zozos last year as well, who had an okay 3-year-old season. For this year, one of the really only big ones you need to worry about this for is Kingsbarns, who right now is a perfect 3 for 3. So similar to Justify, similar to a horse like Materiality from 2016, or Curlin even further back. You haven't been getting a lot of those high quality horses who are coming in undefeated, having not raced at 2. So it's a smaller sample size to look at. But generally, historically, you want to look for a horse that did race at 2 and had some level of success there. So looking at those 5 key features, looking at an E or an EP runner up front, a 95 buyer or better sometime in their recent career, 1st or 2nd in their last prep, making sure that prep was one of the major dirt circuits in America, and making sure they raced that 2. And what this does is it really narrows down the field, because if you're wanting to take your best bet to win, you want to find that style of runner. And this year there's not a lot. There's really only 2 that follow into each of those categories that I mentioned. The first being Verifying. Now, Verifying ran a very good 2nd to Tapit Trice. He's out of Justify, or he's by Justify. And so Verifying has an E style. He'll be near the front. He had a very high speed figure last out. He got 2nd in the Bluegrass. People aren't very high on him. They think there might be distance limitations, but technically under all of these 5 historical trends, he would fit into the path of a winner, and you're going to get very good odds on him. The other one that would be kind of a question mark here would be Derma Sotogake, who is out of the UAE, so doesn't fall into the category from the prep standpoint, but did win that race, did race at 2, has what we would estimate as an E or an EP style run, and then has what we would estimate to be a 95 buyer or better. So the big knocks on the major contenders, Forte, Tapit Trice, Angel of Empire, none of them are E or EP styles. Angel of Empire has never had a 95 buyer or better. 2 Fills had a 100 buyer, is a P style, but raced at Turfway on the synthetic. So you can find negatives to each of these, but what you want to do is you want to find one that's probably going to have 4 of these 5 qualities. Looking back into the races of the last 22 years, 14 of the winners had all 5 of these historical trends. 5 of the winners had 4 of the 5. None of them had 3. And then you had those major outliers in, once again, Giacomo, Rich Strike, and Who's the other one? Animal Kingdom, Mind That Bird. So if you take off those three major outliers, Mind That Bird, Jacquemus, Rich Strike, you get a really good sense of you want a horse that fits in the at least four of these five categories. So good luck on Derby Day. There are some other trends that I think are a little bit overrated. Being undefeated at 3 is a little bit overrated. We mentioned you want either that first or second place finish and those high speed figures. Only 12 of the 22 winners the past 22 years have been undefeated at 3. So just because your horse isn't coming into this race undefeated doesn't mean that they don't have a good shot here. So again, look at the trends, look at the data, see how to pick a winner, because this race is so unique that you can't just say who's the best horse in this race. The best horse in this race is probably Tapit Trice, Forte, one of those who has done very, very well, but it's not about who's the best horse in this race. Overall, from a longitudinal standpoint, it's about who has the best shot to win the Derby based on Derby winning trends going back to the 2000s. Well, that's going to be all for me. My name is Horse Guy Mike. You can follow me at Horse Guy Mike on Twitter. I've got a very good sheet of this as my pin tweet, so you can look at each of the data points from each of the horses going back to the year 2000. All right, take care and good luck on the Derby.